How's it going, ladies and bruises? I'm Bobby Sixkilla. Welcome back to Sekimeiya. It's time to answer some more questions. Poorly, obviously, but questions nonetheless. At least it's multiple choice, you know? Like, if I pick one of these at random, I got a 25% chance of getting it right, so that is not great odds, but it's definitely better than winning the lottery, you know? So, let's go with option 4. I assume Edna found the note where I discarded it, behind the handrail in hallway B. But she just said, I found this just now. And she found it somewhere else that made sense. She gave it to me and I gripped it tightly, which is why I appeared with it in the past and saw it roughly folded. Then I left it behind the handrail, and it remained there. Maybe this is it. After all, there's only one explanation behind that note, that it came from another world. And Edna told us what happened right before that point. She meant Mia. Could Mia have had that note? Did I really write it in another world? Why was she there? And where did she go? Put my hand in my pocket, but the note wasn't there. It had disappeared at some point. Right. The next time I travelled to the past, I didn't appear with it. But why? I should have. Although that was what it seemed like, concluding why it had vanished was relatively simple. Oh, it's what I thought of earlier. I had the note when I travelled to the past. From the staff room, I appeared in hallway B, and then slammed the storeroom door to create a new noise. After that, I waited in the bathroom, on the second floor. There I put my hand in my pocket because I wanted to flush the note away, however it wasn't there. That's why I didn't appear with it. I wanted to flush it away, so if I had, I wouldn't have held the note in the future, so I never could have appeared with it. These details, I wonder how many I missed. Now that I think about it, something similar happened that very same travel. When I touched the Sekimeiya, I had the locker key in my hand. However, later, when I returned to the staff room with Shiroya, I had it in my pocket. In other words, I'd appeared with it in the past, but it had been in my pocket. That's because if I'd appeared with it in my hand, I would have put it in my pocket. That redundant action was cancelled. I simply appeared with it already inside. In the same line, I didn't go to the bathroom many times, did I? I didn't feel like the need to. Perhaps that happened due to my travels. If I felt the urge upon going back, I would have gone to the bathroom, then in the replicated location, that wouldn't have been needed anymore, but the bladder would just automatically be emptied without me noticing. Sounds handy. There are certainly mysteries I can't solve. Maybe I can, but I'm failing to do so. I just want my own Sekimeiya specifically so that I can empty my bladder without having to get up. Mia's existence. Shiroya's in the event room where Edna activated the Sekimeiya. The world around us changed and Sai was the only one to travel through time. That one. Atsuki had hidden the past Sekimeiya in Ito's locker, so Sai went to the future. Damn it! Of course I got it wrong. He'd been in the addict's bedroom, so he reappeared there with Shiroya. That is how he unintentionally locked himself in that room. When that happened, Shiroya was with us, but her clothes were different. She had appeared before me when I cried her name. That was the real Shiroya, but what happened to her? How did she get there? Was the Shiroya from this morning the one who travelled to the past? Her words came back to me. She told me she travelled to November 30th. Wait, what the hell? There's a major contradiction with that. How many days into the past did you just say? Say that again? She travelled to November 30th. I mean, the location should have been correct if she went back that way, right? The place where she stayed? The number of days she spent in the past? Should we go with that one? Whatever. Doesn't really matter. She said she appeared below the gem shop, but that can't be. She would have appeared there if she'd gone from December 15th to November 30th. That location was exactly where she was on November 30th. In other words, she would have appeared there only if she'd gone 15 days into the future. To December 30th. Could she have really gone to the future? Did that occur without her realising it? Right. I didn't think about it earlier, but the Sekimeiya that sent us repeatedly to January 5th at 9 o'clock was the one that Shiroya activated in the bathroom. I could know what had happened, but just the location where she'd appeared spelled it out clearly. Wait, this is why... It's why the chain of travels forward stopped on January 5th. It's gotta be. Shiroya travelled to the future. She went to December 30th. Then, like she told me, she entered the tower through the storeroom days later on January 5th. She didn't tell me exactly what she did, but I know she was in the mechanical room. She told me that she'd found the attic key there. So, she was looking for something, and without realising it, she moved the future Sekimeiya in the mechanical room. Oh fuck, I missed some. Oh well. I looked at the voice recorder. 58:42, it's almost been an hour already. That meant I didn't have much time. Although it once seemed impossible, saving Mia from the explosion should have been simple. Very soon, if I touch the Sekimeiya, I'll be sent back to a point before she died. Then, I could stop it. I could change the past. That would create a world that we want. The one we thought we'd have on that day. But there's still a big problem. If I do that, I can't live in it. Two versions of myself will remain. This is exactly what Shiroi went through. That had previously been a theoretical problem I hadn't needed to confront, however, it was the truth. Although the world was attainable, it had no room for its creator. Given all I'd concluded though, I could think of a slight workaround. I could create that world and then leave it. If I'm right, and touching the Sekimeiya when both ranges overlap will send me to another world, I could do that after saving Mia. If it worked, although I'd end up in my original world, I would have at least facilitated the best one's existence. But I don't get what's happening right now. Why was Mia in the tower? If I did what I'm thinking, I would make sure that our past selves don't go to the event, as that would put them in danger again, so then why is Mia here? And why have I not seen Shiroya anywhere? That time before 9 o'clock, why did Shiroya say that she didn't want to save Mia? It couldn't have been the real Shiroya, but I can't figure out a reason. However, as I thought, doing what I proposed myself was simple. I only had to touch the Sekimeiya and the device displayed 65 minutes and 20 seconds. Well, remember, Shiroya doesn't really want to save Mia, and Mia doesn't really want to save Shiroya. Both of them seem like they don't want the other one to exist. As I could plan out the loop before executing it, there was a best case scenario that I thought up. I would appear on November 24th, that's 21 days before now. It'd be January 5th in 21 days. Basically, if I think about what I'll do on January 5th, I can plan my arrival on November 24th. After November 30th, once everything is done, I can touch the Sekimeiya and go to our previous world. There, I'll know I'll be able to use the Sekimeiya on January 5th after we break free from the chain of travels. In other words, if I obtain both Sekimeiya on the 5th, I can appear with them on November 24th, which will allow me to use them immediately after the 30th. What I can't be sure of is that doing that will bring me to the world I was in. It could send me anywhere else. If that happens though, won't it be the world where Shiroya is? The Shiroya who disappeared from this world earlier today? Would that be consistent? Even though I would have altered this world, would I be sent to the same place where she went? I had no idea where Shiroya was, but I remembered the time that I told her that changing the past was possible. Without a doubt, she wanted Mia to be saved, and the opportunity to accomplish it was finally real. Even with all that I'd concluded, I found myself entirely lost, merely aware that Mia's death was irreversible. If touching the Sekimeiya doesn't send me to our world, what that might mean is that on January 5th, I won't be able to have them. But then, I wouldn't appear with them on November 24th, so I suppose I'll know as soon as I travel. If that happens, I have to wait till December 15th to change worlds during the incident. Was it a flawed plan? I went over it again, and I didn't think so. I intended to change history, so that time there was no option to check a note a future self of mine would leave behind to assure my success. Saving Mia was achievable. I dearly wished for that, hoped it was possible. Being denied, and arrived at a real chance for it, it was a surreal thought, but there was no longer a reason to doubt it. Once it was created, I would let that world continue to exist by leaving it. Would it be possible to find the Shiroya I'd been with? If so, would we be able to return to our world? If we could do that, there would be nothing else to wish for. But I still can't wrap my head around Mia's existence in the town. Does that conflict with what I'm aiming for? How is she here? If I save her, I know I'll make sure none of us go to the tower. How is it possible then, that she was here all day? I don't understand it, but it shouldn't be an issue regardless. On top of that, I can't be content with just knowing that she was in the tower. I still need to act. The note I found in my pocket could have come from Mia. Edna said that she saw her minutes before we travelled to the world where she existed. That note implied only one thing, Shiroya's death. If that world was the very same one I'm in, and Mia came from it, couldn't that have been why I haven't seen Shiroya? Is it because she's not here at all? If I'm able to appear on November 24th with both Sekimeiya, I'll be able to freely travel back through time, just in case there's any issue I can't foresee the first time around. I exhaled slowly. I was ready to act. Even though the true structure of the universe was impossible to comprehend, I knew enough to be confident in myself. And no matter what, it would lead to a result. No matter what it was, an outcome would arise from the labyrinthine mess that had formed around me. I can do it, can't I? I can easily appear on November 24th. It has to be that day, because it's proportional to January 5th. I don't think anyone's still in the tower right now, so the rain should only affect me. The time on the screen was 62:37. I'd taken the past Sekimeiya to the refrigerator as I pressed record, so I didn't have a lot of time to waste. In the past, I won't be able to stay at my house. That means I'll need money to stay somewhere else, but that's not an issue. What I figured out earlier will help me here. In November, I could very easily obtain the money my past self had saved. However, I'd like to avoid doing that, so I don't cause any issues. Instead, I can just duplicate it. I can take that money, which will allow me to have it on January 5th, then I'll appear with it on November 24th, so it won't be necessary to obtain it from my past self. Of course, to have it on January 5th, I have to not spend it, There's another way to solve this though, by duplicating it again. My body shook with anticipation, jittering all the way down to my fingertips. I was closer to leaving the tower than I'd been from what felt like eons. On January 5th, if I'm able to get the Sekimeiya, that will happen inside the tower around the morning. After the point I travelled to the past, since it's currently the afternoon, I'll appear at close to midnight on the 25th. That's perfect. I stopped thinking and stepped closer to the Sekimeiya. 64:47, the seconds are rapidly going up. 1 per second, in fact. 65, only 20 more seconds. The aura of heat around the Sekimeiya had compounded immensely, but my senses were honed in on the timer. I barely registered the temperature. 65:15, 16, 17, 18. 65:19, that was the last time my eyes saw before my sight blackened. Where? Touching the Sekimeiya brought back the darkness, however I immediately discerned where I was, the place where I thought I'd appear. It's the lobby. Since there's no light, it must be nighttime. There was something on my lap and I knew what it was, a suitcase. It was open and both Sekimeiya were in it. It worked! The Sekimeiya are here! This is everything I need to confirm this will work. I'll go back to my world and on January 5th I'll be able to get both Sekimeiya. I could feel that my clothing hadn't changed. When I looked around me, I saw the sight I'd been looking for, longing for, the sky. As my vision adjusted, the multitude of stars above me took shape. The shutter, the barrier to the outside was gone. I stood up, speechless. Then, slowly, I walked over to the door. I could see snow on the ground, illuminated by a handful of streetlights. It was right there, behind a screen of glass. I placed my hand on the handle and gently pushed. The door didn't open. As expected, it was locked. I couldn't go to the storeroom as the hallway cameras would record me. And I put my hand in my pockets, hoping I would feel cold metal. Yes, it's here. It was a keyring with a dog-shaped keychain, the one I found in the coat of a staff member, which I could obtain on January 5th. Since it had been in the clothes the staff member had worn when entering the tower, it was possible one of the keys unlocked the door. Since I'd appeared with it, I knew one would. There were 4 keys and one was bigger than the others. Once I found the keyhole below the handle, I inserted it. When it turned, my shoulders dropped. Unable to believe the truth, I could step out of that place. And when the door opened, I did so without thinking. I was no longer in the building. There was snow around me and I was holding the Sekimeiya. Most importantly, I had a plan I could enact successfully. A lone key was in my pocket, isolated from the set. The rusty key I had obtained from the security room, and in my other pocket I found money. I could only stand there, feeling the cold air hit my face. I couldn't believe I'd been able to walk out. I'd gotten far too used to being stopped. A faint buzz hummed around me, fading into the night. I took a step forward and was assaulted by tiredness. So this is how it'll be on January 5th. I feel exhausted. And I had to go somewhere. The cold was rapidly getting to me and the full night was still ahead. Where do I go? There's a hostel in the centre of town, but I'm not sure it'll be open. I kept a replica of my keys outside my house, so I could silently sneak to my parents' room and stay there without alerting my own self. It wasn't something I wanted to do, though. I suppose I'll have to see. I turned around and saw a large shadow uncovering the stars. It was the tower, looking even bigger than I recalled. With the same key I'd used to leave, I locked the front door. Once I'd taken a few steps, all light was gone. Fortunately, I could navigate the streets without a problem. I walked, unable to hear any sounds beyond my own steps. As I got closer to the centre, more faint lights dotted the streets. Soon I stepped into the widest street and approached a building I'd never been to. There was a sign above the door. It read Eagle Hostel. Was it closed? I don't see anyone. There was a bell near it, so I pressed it. I waited, wondering if the sound had reached anyone. It took me a while to discern that a tall man was approaching me. He turned on the lights and opened the door from the inside. His eyes showed me that he'd been about to fall asleep. Sorry, would it be possible for me to spend the night here? You don't have a reservation? No, something just came up and I've nowhere to stay. We have spare rooms, but it's 8,000 a night. That's fine. I might have to stay a few days. I suddenly looked down at myself and noticed that my clothes still had very faint traces of smoke on them. Although, I thought, not identical to how they'd been before travelling. I paid one night's rate and was given 2 keys, one for the hostel and another for a bedroom. My attention was immediately grabbed by a digital clock on the table. It was 22:54 on November 24th, a Thursday. It's a very nice room, you know. Most of the places I've stayed at are nowhere near this nice. Can't believe it, I travelled 3 weeks to the past. Within the tower, anything had seemed possible. However, with the effect reflected in the real world, my mind couldn't accept it. Both Sekimeiya were in the suitcase, and the smell of the tower still hung around me. The room was linked to a bathroom with a shower and a kitchen. I had a lot of things to think about, but my body dropped on the bed, giving me no chance to do so. Wait, the money, I have to duplicate it. I paid for a single night, so I had to duplicate that amount, and then the entire sum. I got out of bed and approached the suitcase. They've been outside for so long, I'm sure they don't have a lot of energy. I should be able to touch one without the range reaching anyone else here. I wonder which is the future one. If I touch the past one, I'll just appear in the bathroom and stay there until my past self leaves. I'd undressed before getting in the bed since the room was warm, and I replicated my past location. The money I'd been holding would duplicate. I placed the suitcase on the bed and separated both gemstones, then I touched one of them in the center of the room. Huh? My vision went dark, but I could hear something. I wasn't alone. Wait, is this my bedroom? Not the hostel's, but the one in my house. When I glanced at the source of the sound, I saw my own body sleeping in my bed. What? Why am I here? I slowly stepped back, unable to take my eyes off myself. It was November. That self of mine hadn't yet reunited with Shiroi and Mia. By the time I reached the door, I started to understand what had happened. My clothes changed. I went to the future. I think I travelled further than expected. Maybe the Sekimeiya were gathering energy inside the suitcase even though the outside was so chilly. I must have travelled more than 15 minutes through time, so the replicated location was from the time before I appeared in the lobby, when I was about to sleep in my old world. Trying to prevent myself from being noticed, I approached the front door. It seemed I'd replicated my body on November 24th, and it was fortunate I'd appeared when I'd already fallen asleep. I felt the handle and opened the door. The sky brimmed with stars and my clothes were no longer protecting me from the freezing air. I had left the hostel bedroom empty, so I ran them. Once again, I had to ring the bell to enter. To my surprise, an older woman opened the door. Sorry, I had to go out for a bit. Where's the man from before? Oh, old Stanley. He sticks to a strict sleep schedule. Next time, don't ring the bell, just knock. He gets mean when you wake him up. Along with you now. The Sekimeiya was still on the bed. It was without a doubt the future one, as the clock showed 23:29. You need to write on it with a Sharpie. Future. I didn't change worlds, so the range of the other Sekimeiya didn't reach me. I hope nobody else travelled with me. I sat on the bed and panted, each inhalation bringing lancing pain. I was very tired and it took me a second to process why. The replicated location had been from when the past me was about to go to sleep, so I wanted to do the same. I didn't actually duplicate the money. My old clothes were beside the bed, but I had to reset the Sekimeiya before attempting it again. I sat up and walked to the kitchen. There was a refrigerator here. It was running, so I knew it would work to cool off the Sekimeiya. After putting both of them inside, I grabbed the money from the pocket of my other pants. I took the future Sekimeiya back out and waited a few seconds. Then I left the money on the floor and felt the surface of the gemstone. My sight hardly changed, but I knew that I'd teleported. I was holding the stack of money, and the original bills were on the floor. I could use them while I kept the duplicated ones until January 5th. I have to duplicate a night's worth too, since I'd already paid for it. The future Sekimeiya was still powered off. I reset it to repeat the process, and once I duplicated the full amount of money, I left both Sekimeiya in the refrigerator with me. I fell to the bed. I didn't bother taking off my clothes the second time, since they were a lot lighter than before. It's nice to be out of that tower, I tell you. Before I knew it, I could see the sun through the window. I looked at the clock, trying to remember where I was. 10:09, November 25th. It all came back to me when I saw those blurry numbers. I quickly got out of bed and checked the Sekimeiya in the refrigerator. Doesn't seem like the Sekimeiya heat up inside, so they're fine here. November 25th, on this day, I hadn't even reached Mia's school yet. Right now I was at home all alone. I felt a little dizzy, so I put on my original clothes and walked out of the room to the cafeteria I'd seen downstairs. Fortunately, I had enough money to cover all the days I needed. Once I felt rested, I went back up. I sat on the bed and went over what I would do. I'm in the past of a world where Mia was alive. If I don't change the past, will she not die? Or was she in the tower for another reason? I have the Sekimeiya, so maybe I should see what happens on the 30th and then go back to the past. I can't risk the plan getting ruined due to the difference in the events that I'm not aware of. If what happened on the 30th repeats, why would Mia have been in the tower? Is there an explanation for that? The concept of different worlds I have is rough, but I was thinking of something. If I save Mia, my plan was to go back to my initial world, as I can't stay in this one. That would allow this world to exist at the very least. But after saving her, I could travel to another world with Mia, which would result in the same effect. The other world would end up with her, while this one wouldn't. I couldn't bring myself to do that though. I'd already accepted Mia's death once. Even if I was able to bring her to our world, would that truly be better? I would just create avoidable pain in another. However, in other words, I believe it's possible that Mia in the tower came from a different world, from one in which she didn't die. That would explain why she was there with no influence of mine. Everything regarding other worlds was too hypothetical. I had to stick to what I'd planned. I'll make sure she doesn't die. I'll make this world into the one that we wanted. Then, I'll have to abandon it, but at least I'll know it exists. After November 30th, I'll go back in time to prevent her death. After that, I'll change worlds, hopefully arriving in the one I was in. If that works, I won't want to change the past. My goal will be to find the real Shiroi, who I'm sure will be there at one point. Maybe when she disappeared with Naomi, or maybe when she was in the tower with different clothes. At the end of it all, we can leave together. I mean, it probably won't, right? But, why is this pink instead of, blue? Is this important? Should I save? I'm gonna save. I'm concerned now. That'll work, sure, let's do it. It would work. Atsuki was sure of it. He had to dispel his doubts and be confident he would succeed. There were 5 days until the 30th, but there was nothing he could do until then. He didn't leave the hostel. It had all the food he needed and a bedroom to sleep in. While the final day approached, he made sure the Sekimeiya worked. He travelled a few minutes through time and confirmed that all he'd learned still applied. It's not going to work, is it? November 30th came. Atsuki was still in that room, although it would soon be his time to act. He didn't take his eyes off the clock. At 9 o'clock he could hardly breathe, remembering what had once happened. It must have already occurred by that point. Mia was likely dead. He hated that it had been allowed to repeat, but otherwise his plan could have been hindered. Even though the time had passed, he couldn't go to the shop for fear of being recognised. He had to wait until the morning news to know if everything had repeated as he'd once experienced it. He stared at the ceiling all night. The moment the sun rose, he went to the cafeteria to turn on the television. His eyes bored holes into the screen, waiting for the news to begin. Once it did, massive headlines were shown at once. He didn't see it. None of them had been about a gas explosion in Yushibana. It couldn't be. There was no way that wouldn't have made local news. He kept changing the channel, but there was no mention of what should have happened the previous night. Had he made a mistake? When that thought occurred to him, he dashed out of the hostel. He ran toward the stone buildings as fast as the snow allowed him. When he reached the street, he was able to see it in the distance. There was light and Musashi gemstones. He didn't stop running. He burst through the door and gaped at the owner in disbelief. "Oh, you're back. What's the rush?" "What?" He looked at the far side of the shop. The floor was intact. "Did anything happen yesterday?" What do you mean?" "No. I mean, you've got the Sekimeiya, right? So how's he gonna have the Sekimeiya to give to Ashiya and have other people come to intercept it and stuff if you've got the Sekimeiya, right? You can't duplicate the Sekimeiya. We've already proven that. Is that right?" "I don't know what you mean. What are you talking about?" After seeing the undamaged shelves, there was a question Atsuki had to ask. "What about the Sekimeiya? The Sek... How do you know about that name? I was planning to use it in the future." Atsuki ran out of the shop, ignoring this owner's shouts. He ran to a nearby bus station, where he'd meet Shiroya and Mia on that final day. There was nothing there. Atsuki recalled having seen a flyer with the words "the Sekimeiya" stuck on the post. Next, he ran to his own house. "There's light in the windows. I'm not in the hospital." He couldn't believe it. The explosion hadn't happened. Why? And what next? He had no idea what to do, so he stood paralysed. However, that was what he wanted. He hadn't done anything, but the result had been the same. Speechless, he waited in front of his house. Light snow began to fall, but he kept watching his window. He could see a figure behind it, similar to his own. He realised it had been hours his front door open. It really was his own self, with an expression he'd personally long since abandoned. He didn't hide, but it didn't seem like he'd been seen. He saw his own body walk ahead, so he followed him. Eventually they reached Ciutadella Park. Mia and Shiroya were there, waving at him. It was what he wanted most. Those days were continuing beyond November 30th. But there was something more pressing within Atsuki's mind. It didn't make sense. It was a world that didn't make sense. Impossible perfection? That's my favourite kind of perfection. I guess that's a bad end? I don't know. Yeah, that will not work. Okay, cool. I like impossible perfection. Can't we just roll with that? Will this work? The most delicate part is altering the story of this world. When I changed the past, it was clear that the result wasn't straightforward. It almost created a mesh of realities. Some people kept their memories. Sudden realization shattered all my thoughts. No, what am I thinking? I didn't change the past at all. I decided to try and change the past after I suffered that strange injury in the elevator. I used the Sekimeiya to travel more than half an hour to the past. I began to walk toward the event room to check the time, but voices stopped me. I got close to the door and focused my hearing. Just suddenly ran away. Honestly wasn't sure. I recognised the conversation. I'd arrived approximately 2 minutes before the point only Sai had travelled. It was a couple of minutes before Sai disappeared from us. In other words, a couple of minutes before we changed worlds. To change the past, I produced a sound in hallway A, a sound we'd never heard. When I slammed the door, I thought I changed the past because we hadn't heard that sound in the event room, but the reason we didn't hear it was because we'd gone to a different world. And in that world, I ended up taking the elevator up to follow Shiroya. That must have been when we came back. For some reason, we went back to our world. That was what the injury must have signified. The elevator stopped abruptly because it wasn't moving in our world, and I cut myself with the handrail as my body overlapped with it. It couldn't have been going too fast, but as it ceased all movement, it propelled us upward and we slammed into the floor. I felt my right hand burning. I looked at it and saw a cut. Oh, you're bleeding! I could only process the intense pain coming from the wound. While I couldn't comprehend how it had happened, I understood that I cut my hand with the handrail when our bodies lifted, and it had been right above me. And that was the exact world we'd been in before. The past Sekimeiya was back in the staff room, while where I'd hidden it. I didn't teleport back there. Akira was gone, inside once again the person we'd been with in the event room. Also, the blood I would leave on the staircase must have already been there. The doors opened, so I dashed out of the elevator as fast as I could, forcing my eyes to shut to suppress the pain. So, when I went back in time and produced that new sound, I didn't actually change anything. When I slammed the door, the event room was already empty. And then, despite the difference I would have caused, Edna and I still got out of the elevator on the 3rd floor. I thought I'd created an incomprehensible mess of memories, but now I understand. It seemed like only Sai remembered the effect of my change because he was the only person there when I slammed the door. For him, the blood in the hallways was always there, whereas for Edna and me, it wasn't before we took the elevator. I looked next to us, and as I thought, the other trail of blood was coming from the elevator. It was from the time I'd gone down after suffering the injury. The floor was proof of both realities at once. What the hell? This means I have no idea if the past can be changed. No, there's no way, is there? All that must mean is that it's not possible. It wasn't changed a single time. When I produced the Sekimeiya's travel formula, I made use of hypothetical worlds, all different from each other, but the real one never changed. I was out of my mind when I tried it with the storeroom door. I could travel to the past to close the door I'd seen open, but if the past can't be changed, the explanation for that could be that I'd die of a sudden heart attack or something like that. There's no other way to know but to try it though, and doing so is incredibly risky. Now what? Technically, I could never die after travelling to the past, or else there'd be no future location to replicate. Would I die by touching the Sekimeiya then? There was no way to verify any of this. I was suddenly struck with no way to know whether what I wanted to accomplish was achievable. At the very least, my past travel seemed to confirm I'd be alive on January 5th and January 26th. Is there a way to increase or decrease the chance that it's possible to change the past? Confirming it seems like it's off the table. I went to the kitchen where I had both Sekimeiya. I grabbed them and determined which one was the past one. What could I really do to check this? There was a salt shaker next to the stove. I think this is all I can do. I left it on the floor of the bedroom, then I stepped back to the kitchen and closed the door. I waited a few minutes thinking about what I would do. Once I was certain, I took out the past Sekimeiya and looked at the bedroom. The salt shaker was no longer on the floor. It was on the rightmost nightstand, next to a bunch of salt scattered around. I looked at it intensely. I'd known it was going to be there. Then I waited a bit before I touched the Sekimeiya in the kitchen. When I did, I went a few minutes back in time. Huh? I appeared in the bathroom. Silently, I glanced at the bedroom. The salt shaker was on the floor next to the closed door. I picked it up and slowly brought it to the nightstand. There was no salt on it. Its wooden surface was perfectly clean. So far I've experienced both what occurs when you travel to the past with no intentions to change it, and when you travel to the past with intentions specifically not to change it. What I don't know is what happens if you travel to the past wanting to change it, when all your actions could have that intent. That might be a safe way to finally know. I gripped the salt shaker and held it over the nightstand. If I shake my hand, a bunch of salt will fall out. I've already seen a pattern of the scattered salt, however my intention is not to repeat it. I want the past to change. I wish for that pattern to differ. Abruptly I shook my hand, releasing countless bits of salt. What would happen was not my call. If I wanted the past to change, so if it was possible, I hoped the pattern would be different. If it wasn't possible, although I wouldn't do it on purpose, the pattern would be the same one I'd seen. The decision of whether the past would change or not was not mine. The universe would let me know instead. When my hand stopped still, I stared down. It was identical. Every last bit of salt had ended up exactly where I'd seen it, despite my wishes to change history. I see. I could blow on it. I could make it change, however that's impossible. Anyone who would blow on it wouldn't have made it here in the first place. With my head down, I walked back to the bathroom. Soon my past self came out of the kitchen. He saw the salt pattern and went back in time. It's funny, I thought I would appear in the bedroom instead, but I appeared in the bathroom. Because I had no urge to leave, I had no idea what to do after that. Eventually I had to go eat something. When I got back, I sat on the bed, unable to clear my mind. And when I went to sleep, I was just as lost. The past couldn't be changed, there was no point doing anything. I got up wearing the same clothes with a persistent feeling of impotence. I went down to the cafeteria. After everything I'd been through, saving Mia was still impossible. However, I'd seen her in the tower. That was the wild card, and that was what confused me the most. Had she really come from another world? Had her existence been another mere illusion? I did all I could to refuse that. If there is something I was sure of, it was that it wasn't up to me. It was evident the universe itself was what decided the outcome of everything. A large part of my plan had been ripped to shreds, but the last bit was still on my mind. I could reunite with Shiroya. We could go back to our world and leave together. For that, I could change worlds at that very moment, but I knew everything would repeat. So in the world I was in, on December 15th, Mia would be in that tower. I had to see that with my very own eyes. Alright, we need to wrap this one up here, because we're out of time for this episode, but it looks like we are definitely coming to some kind of climax here. Looks like changing the past, not possible after all. That really takes the wind out of your sails, huh? Imagine to have come this far, and then being denied. Shitty, man. Anyway, hope you guys enjoyed it. Thanks for watching. Thanks for hanging out with me, and I'll see you in the next one.